everywhere, GBS.
A very good afternoon. It is 1 p.m. here in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, and this is the Ambassador with me, Ambassador Susan Ng'ang'a, and here is where we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. We'll start this bulletin with the African Union Summit, where Kenyan President has urged all African leaders to speak in one voice and amplify the grievances in all platforms across the world. Ruto said this during the 7th African Union Summit in the United Nations headquarters in the United States, in a summit that had been attended by 10 head of states, as Davis Karani now reports.
The United Nations headquarters in the New York City has been a host of 10 African heads of state during the 7th anniversary of AU Summit, in which the conversation about speaking for African demands dominated the bilateral talks between the leaders, as President William Ruto urged African leaders to air African grievances to the UN.
We must amplify Africa's voice in every forum, carrying this agenda into bilateral, regional, multilateral engagements, so that Africa's message can resonate in every space that we find. Secondly, as the world questions whether the United Nations remains fit for purpose, and I think there is a very big debate about it, we must insist that Africa's continued exclusion is unacceptable and indefensible. At 80, the UN's credibility will be judged by whether it finally recognizes and delivers justice and representation for the 1.4 billion people of the African continent.
It is on this statement that Malawian President Mada Bio differed with President William Ruto, as he stated that African leaders have been speaking for Africans on every platform.
We have carried Africa's voice to every region, every forum, and every negotiation. Our greatest achievement has been our unity. Despite our diversity, Africa has remained steadfastly aligned behind a single principled position. That unity is our strength. No reform can succeed without a united Africa.
Demands for Africa's representation in the United Nations Security Council was also echoed and repeated several times by African leaders, and leading the African Union delegations in the United Nations Council, the African Union chairperson Mahmoud Yusuf Ali raised an alarm that was supported by most African leaders who took to the floor.
Your Excellencies, 2025, the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, must be a turning point. The African Union, through the C10, calls on the General Assembly to act decisively. The reform of the Security Council is not a matter of convenience, but of necessity, essential for the credibility of multilateralism itself. On this landmark occasion, we therefore issue a call to all UN member states, and especially the permanent members of the Security Council, to engage earnestly in the reform negotiations and to honor the African common position.
Africa carries a disproportionate share of the Security Council's agenda and is among the largest contributors of the UN peacekeeping. Yet we remain the only continent without permanent representation. This historic injustice must come to an end sooner rather than later. Beyond asserting our right, we must be clear about what we seek and how to achieve it. Securing Africa's rightful seats is our common demand. But we must also be prepared to shoulder the responsibilities that come with permanent membership, including how we will choose our representatives.
Africa deserves permanency at all global decision forums, especially those seized with making decisions related to the maintenance of international peace and security. For 2 decades, the common African position has gained traction with broader support from many interested groups.
Is this a new revolution that will lead to Africa being included as permanent members of the United Nations Security Council? Time will tell. Davis Karani for GB.
Now to history being made in Guinea is voting in a historic constitutional referendum today, a process widely viewed as a turning point for the West African nation as it seeks to break away from years of military rule. The proposed changes, which include presidential term limits and stronger institutional checks, are being billed as a major step towards restoring civilian governance and rebuilding public trust in the country's democratic future. Here are the details.
The proposed constitutional changes aim to restore democratic governance by limiting presidential terms and strengthening institutions. The referendum comes nearly 3 years after the military seized power in a coup that overturned former President Alpha Condé. In the lead up to today's vote, the junta has pledged to oversee a transition process, insisting that the referendum marks a decisive step in rebuilding public trust and opening space for competitive politics. Civil society groups and opposition parties remain cautious, calling for transparency and international monitoring to guarantee credibility.
Yes, of course, because this is to our advantage. From the articles that I've read, I couldn't take the time to read every single one, but anyway, the majority that I read are really in our interest. So I'm confident for the referendum. I'm very proud to be here today because it's my first time voting. All Guineans are very proud today. This is what I can tell you.
Guinea has faced repeated cycles of political unrest, with disputed elections and coups undermining stability. The country's mineral wealth, particularly in bauxite, has long contrasted with the poverty faced by ordinary citizens, fueling frustrations with past governments.
The vote is important for the future of the Guinean people. Everyone who loves the Guinean people must accept the need to obey the law. And when we speak of the law, we speak of leadership. Who is the leader? It's all of us. Today, there are ethnic groups, but I don't count ethnicity. We're all Guineans. Let's join hands to vote in peace and transparency.
If approved, the new constitution is expected to pave way for parliamentary elections next year, followed by a presidential poll that will end military rule and return Guinea to a civilian-led government. Molin Ronum, GBS News.
And now to matters humanitarian. The United Nations is sounding the alarm over Sudan, warning that the country's conflict is spiraling further out of control. A new human rights report details a surge in civilian killings, ethnic violence, and atrocities, with thousands of people dead in just 6 months. Let's take a look.
You see the level of destruction for the past 2 years. This is heartbreaking. I spent 2 years of my life in this generous country, which has shown solidarity to hundreds of thousands of refugees over the years. UNHCR in Khartoum, as you can see, is destroyed, totally destroyed. The level of destruction that I have just witnessed in Khartoum explains to you why we have over 4 million people who have been forced to flee this country and go into neighboring countries.
Rising civilian casualties, growing ethnic violence, and a worsening humanitarian crisis in Sudan are the grim findings of a new United Nations human rights report released in Geneva. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights says the conflict-driven crisis has intensified, with thousands of civilians killed in recent months.
The conflict-driven crisis has intensified, pointing to a rise in civilian killings, including summary executions, amid growing ethnic violence and a worsening humanitarian situation.
Between January and June this year, at least 3,384 civilians were documented killed, most of them in Darfur, accounting for nearly 80% of all civilian deaths recorded in 2024. The real toll is believed to be far higher.
Several major offensives and mass casual incidents were particularly deadly. In April, an offensive by the Rapid Support Forces in El Fasher and other areas in North Darfur resulted in at least 527 deaths, including over 270 in Zamzam and Abu Shouk camps for displaced people. In March, airstrikes by the Sudan Armed Forces on Tora Market in North Darfur killed at least 350 civilians, including 13 members of one family.
The report also details nearly 1,000 unlawful killings outside combat, many carried out through summary execution. Witnesses describe children as young as 14 executed during Sudanese Armed Forces search operation in Khartoum earlier this year.
One witness who observed SAF search operations in civilian neighbourhoods in East Nile, Khartoum, between March and April, said that he saw children as young as 14 and 15 years of age, accused of being RSF members, summarily killed.
UN human rights officials warn that impunity is fueling further atrocities, including war crimes. They say civilians attempting to flee Al Fasher face impossible choices.
This violence, in all of its vile forms, must end. Impunity continues to drive cycles of violations and abuses. To stop this, accountability is critical to hold those responsible to account. Sudan's conflict is a forgotten one, and we hope that this report puts the spotlight on the disastrous situation where atrocity crimes, including war crimes, are being committed.
And with that story brings us to a very fast break here at The Ambassador. We'll be right back as we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics.
Hi kids! Welcome to Kids Mind, where we learn, we laugh, and we explore. So kids, are you ready to listen to our today's Bible story? Are you ready to listen?
You're happy and you know, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know, clap your hands.
Samson was a mighty man, a mighty man was he. Samson was a mighty man, a mighty man was he. Samson was a mighty man, a mighty man was he. Between a want or a need, which one is more wise?
Are you a Gen Z? Are you a millennial? Are you together in parenting?
If we do not even handle them correctly, believe you me, things will go out of the basket. And you remember there's this joke that I found somewhere that your parents leaving you and telling you, achaneni na hizo ng'ombe tu hapo nitakuja kuzipeleka hoteli. Major picture that I want to put across is kindly, this generation needs to be brought back to the chungu cha jamii. And that is why I'm saying, you just need to be sat down and be taught. This is the way to go.
To pay a manual bus.
I mean, sit down and and discuss.
What is the manual then?
last year you are nominated for the Digital Creators Awards.
Yes.
Yeah, and you bagged second place for Creator of the Year.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
But by the time I was leaving university, the vice chancellor had bought my art piece.
Wow.
To hang in his office.
Wow.
Yeah.
The difference between pointillism, stippling, dot mandala, and dotilism.
Okay. Mostly do art with dots, with lines, and I like to just think of myself as a versatile artist when it comes to patterns.
What has words but never speaks?
We're going to be talking about the rock industry and rock culture in Kenya.
When an artist goes into a studio thinking about a hit song, God walks out of the room. So msanii achaguangi hit, hakuna msanii. Msanii achaguangi hit. Like even most of the hit songs, some of the songs zinakuanga zile msanii hata apendi kwa hiyo.
Well, that's true. This pressure that is coming in, you need to feed your audience what they want to be fed with, right? What is trending, you need to go as per what is trending. So if you ask a majority of people out here, yes, rock music is there, it is being played, but it's not recognized sana.
Some years back, reggae music used to have a stereotype too. Reggae ilikuwa watu wa bangi, watu
sijui
kama mtu alikufa, assuming someone died who died in the 90s, someone died in 1995, akifufuka saa hii aone watu wanasikia reggae, he'd be very shocked. My goal is to demystify rock in Africa kwa sababu music is music. Guitar, the rock, all music came from Africa. Muziki haina kabila. How do I put muziki haina kabila? In fact, they'd be shocked. The rock music we know as of now came from black people. Wakamba ndio marockstar Kenya, high Kambas. You know the way they play the guitar is just an expression. Yeah, there's Kikuyu, gospel, hard rock. A guy called Kanyaki, for example. So it's very misunderstood. Watu wanasema ni ya madevo, ni ya wazungu.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back to the bulletin, and now to developing news. Tens of thousands of people attended a memorial service in Arizona for Charles Kirk, the right-wing U.S. activist and founder of Turning Point USA, who was shot dead this month. The event took place on Sunday at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, which seats more than 63,000 people. Organizers said additional space was arranged nearby to accommodate overflow crowds. President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and several other Republicans addressed the gathering, which Turning Point USA called Building a Legacy, Remembering Charlie Kirk.
One part political rally, and one part celebration of life for a fallen martyr to the conservation cause.
Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
The Super Bowl-sized memorial service for conservative icon Charlie Kirk held the feel of a state funeral. The corridors of conservative power in Washington were largely empty, transported for a day to State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona.
Please welcome to the stage, Secretary Marco Rubio.
The roster of speakers included much of the presidential cabinet, Vice President J.D. Vance, and was headlined by President Donald Trump.
Charlie has been reunited with his creator in heaven. His voice on earth will echo through the generations.
A capacity crowd of tens of thousands lined up in the pre-dawn hours to honor the man many credit with putting Donald Trump in office with the votes of young conservatives.
He really was the first person to reach out to the youth in the conservative movement. He made conservatism cool again.
Alyssa Grover attended the Utah University appearance where Kirk was shot.
When I heard the bullet, I turned my head and everyone got down and we were down for like maybe 30 seconds-ish and then everyone started running.
Kirk's death has launched a debate over the Trump administration promise to crack down on liberal voices the president accuses of fomenting violence to the thousands inside and outside of State Farm Stadium who formed the cult of Kirk. The thousands inside and outside of State Farm Stadium who formed the cult of Kirk. He is the personification of free speech. To the administration he served, Kirk's lasting legacy may well be to serve a justification for a government campaign to suppress it. Reporting for GBS TV, I'm Paul M. Minor.
Protesters have taken to the streets in several Canadian cities today, targeting Mark Carney's emerging political agenda and raising concerns over his growing influence in national politics. The demonstration reflects a widening debate on whether the former Bank of England and Bank of Canada governors should play a direct role in shaping the country's political future. Demonstrators gathered outside government buildings and financial institutions, holding placards and chanting slogans against what they described as an elitist agenda. Organizers accused Carney of using his global financial credentials to push policies that do not reflect the priorities of working Canadians. Some protesters expressed fears that his focus on climate finance and green economic reforms could impose higher costs on families already struggling with inflation and job insecurity. Others questioned his close ties with international financial institutions, arguing that his political positioning may prioritize global interests over domestic concerns. Carney, who has been mentioned as a potential future leader within the Liberal Party, has yet to confirm his political ambitions, but has increasingly appeared at major policy forums, sparking speculations.
Right now, we're seeing this moment where the federal government is pushing forward anti-people, anti-climate, anti-indigenous, anti-migrant agendas. Every law that Carney has put into place since now is about enriching the CEOs and hurting a common people. He's arming Israel. He's pushing people against migrants, and we're saying no to that. We are drawing the line.
We are now at code red on the planet Earth. Humanity is unequivocally facing a climate emergency. And what we're here to say is stop all of the political, the economic stuff, and the legal stuff. We are in an emergency, and we've got to act as it is an emergency.
President Trump has voiced opposition to Western allies' recognition of a Palestine state, hours after United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia made coordinated announcements. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also rejected the move.
The United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine.
The United Kingdoms, Canada and Australia have formally recognized the state of Palestine, citing the need to support diplomatic effort towards a two-state solution. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the move a moral step made in response to the ongoing conflict in Gaza.
But a lot of bad things. You know, Hamas said that they're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time. So we have to remember that. So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
And then for both of you...
But you do understand about October 7th.
Of course,
you do understand.
So believe me, I understand.
One of the worst
President Donald Trump, speaking alongside Starmer in London, expressed disagreement. He described the recognition as one of our few disagreements, signaling a rare divide between the US and its closest allies. Trump reiterated support for Israel and avoided direct comment on its military actions.
יש לי מסר ברור לאותם מנהיגים שמכירים במדינה פלסטינית לאחר הטבח הנורא ב7 באוקטובר. אתם מעניקים פרס עצום לטרור. ויש לי מסר נוסף עבורכם. זה לא יהיה. לא תקום מדינה פלסטינית ממערב לירדן.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the recognitions, stating that a Palestinian state must not exist and warned that such move undermines regional stability.
כן. הכפלנו את ההתיישבות היהודית ביהודה ושומרון ונמשיך בדרך זו.
With more countries expected to weigh in, attention now shifts to the UN General Assembly, where the future of Palestinian statehood will face its next test. Reporting for GBS TV, I'm Ibrahim Said.
Michael G. Waltz has officially taken up his post as the United States Permanent Representative to the United Nations in New York. He presented his credential to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, complete with the formalities that mark the start of his diplomatic assignment. Waltz, a former congressman and army officer, steps into the role at a time when the UN faces mounting pressure over global conflicts, humanitarian crises, and a call for reform. His arrival comes just days before the General Assembly reconvenes, where his first statements could signal Washington's tone on key international issues. No major remarks are made during the credential ceremony, but Waltz's presence is already drawing attention. Observers now wait to see how he'll navigate the UN's divided landscape and whether his approach will reflect continuity or change in UN foreign policy.
The United States to the UN, both political and financial support have been crucial for our organization, and I believe that one of the pillars of international cooperation. So I am delighted to receive you, and I ask you please, knowing that we share a common purpose on peace, asking you please to convey.
And that brings us to the end of today's edition. I'm your Ambassador Susan Nganga, and this has been Ambassador. Stay with us for continuous updates throughout the day, and be sure to join me every Monday and Tuesday as we debunk global diplomacy and geopolitics. Thank you for your time and company. Until next time, goodbye.
Everywhere, GBS.